Where cars now rush by on the 520 bridge, David Denny and Thomas Burke and some of the other city founders wanted to find an easier way to get the coal and logs from East King County out to Puget Sound. According to historian Paul Dorpat, they built this canal with the singular intent not to get boats through it, but to get lumber through it, because Denny with others had built a lumber mill at south end of Lake Union. They wanted to build all this reserve of great lumber from Lake Washington through this canal and shoot it down. In the early days of Seattle, Chinese immigrants were one of the main labor workforces in the area. Of the 20,000 men that built the Northern Pacific Railroad line between Pasco and Tacoma, 15,000 were Chinese. Chinese laborers were also hired for jobs at sawmills, logging operations, picking hops, and other agricultural work all over Washington state. In 1883, David Denny and Thomas Burke hired the Watchung Company and his contingent of 25 men. They began by widening and straightening Ross Creek between Salmon Bay and Lake Union. By early 1885, they had completed this project, which included building a small wooden dam at lock at Lake Union. This enabled logs to be lowered from the lake to the channel. A year later, these workers finished a 16-foot wide cut connecting the two lakes at what was known as the Portage. The difference in elevation between the lakes produced a current in the channel that carried logs from Lake Washington down to Portage Bay.
On December 15, 1868, Chinese settler Chun Ching Hock opened the Watchung Company, a general merchandise store at the foot of Mill Street, later changed to Yesler Way. Many believe that Chun was Seattle's first Chinese immigrant. He traveled in 1860 from China to San Francisco and quickly came north to Seattle. The Watchung Company sold a variety of Chinese goods, as well as sugar, rice, tea, flour, and even opium, legal until 1902. They were also a big importer and merchandiser of fireworks throughout the Pacific Northwest. But selling goods was only a small part of the business. One of the company's biggest projects was supplying workers in 1883 to dig a canal, the first Montlake Cut. The Chinese workers also built many of Seattle's streets. Chun was once quoted saying, "I graded Pike, Union, Washington, and even Jackson streets. At one time, the city owed me $60,000. I had to sue to recover it." The Watchung Company received a commission for each worker placed on a job. If employers could not pay in cash, they often paid in real estate. And Chun's company soon owned lots of real estate and properties, and even entire city blocks throughout Chinatown and Seattle. The Watchung Company will operate in Seattle until 1953. The store's final location was at 719 South King Street, which will later become home to the Wing Luke Museum in 2008.
These labor contractors played a big role in bringing Chinese laborers to the Pacific Northwest, including Chen Ji He, who even had a building in Seattle named after him. Today, that building is still standing and located at 400 2nd Avenue Extension South, right in the heart of Pioneer Square, the original location for the first of 3 Chinatown locations. From this building, they have contributed to many projects around Seattle, one in particular that has not been talked about as much, the building of the first Montlake Cut.
When the cut was completed in 1884, there was still plenty of old-growth forest along Lake Union to feed David Denny's Western Mill at the lake's southern end. In 1916, the construction of the Montlake Cut we know today's portion of the Ship Canal was finished, and the old log canal, the first Montlake Cut, was filled in and given to other uses. Eventually, most of the land became the strip of landscaping along the north margin of the State Highway 520's approach to the Evergreen Point Bridge. In the beginning, Seattle's whites welcomed the aid of Chinese labor. However, Attitudes quickly changed and tensions rose due to economic collapse and unemployment for white workers. The Depression of the mid-1800s would eventually lead to the passing of the National Chinese Exclusion Act in 1882. The Chinese Exclusion Act was the first significant law restricting immigration in the United States. Chinese immigration to the United States was suspended for 10 years, and Chinese persons were ineligible for U.S. citizenship. In February of 1886, Seattle organizers of the Knights of Labor and other early unions wanted the Chinese removed from the city. They demanded the expulsion of 350 Seattle Chinese residents living mostly in the first Chinatown, east of Pioneer Square's red light district, and were told to take only what they could carry. Martial law was declared, and tension gradually cooled in Seattle and throughout the West Coast, as all but a few Chinese departed. Congress ultimately paid upwards of $276,000 to the Chinese government in compensation for the West Coast rioting.